Hey there. Welcome to a GSPN Milwaukee Bucks podcast, Gyro Step and Win in 6 collab pod. I am one of your hosts, Ty Windisch, joined on this very special occasion, a beautiful night for the Milwaukee Bucks, by my good friend and host of the Win in 6 podcast and Talk of the Tundra, Jordan Treske. Jordan, happy Sunday. Good evening. I think the Sunday scaries have been vanquished, at least for this week, by the Milwaukee Bucks with their stunning 118-93 win over the Oklahoma City Thunder, their sixth straight win over OKC, their first win since OKC came back to the top of the Western Conference. The Thunder came into this game as the best team in the West. They were not on a back-to-back. They were not injured. They were at a one-day rest disadvantage. If you're a national media member listening here trying to figure out how to spin this away from it being extremely impressive, you can bring that up. However, Bucks without everyone's favorite sharpshooter, AJ Green, with a non-COVID illness for the game. All this to say, Jordan, I think you're doing great, but I must ask, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Your assumptions and your forecast was very spot on. It is very good to watch the Bucks as of late, and I think tonight was kind of a celebration in a lot of ways of things that have been building. I forget the phrase that Lisa Byington has been saying, but points of progress. I think that's what she's been saying. It's building big, baby. It's building big, and tonight was probably one of the most dominant wins of the season.
Oh, yeah.
Increasingly saying that, obviously since Doc took over too. So, yeah, I'm doing very well.
Glad to hear it. I forgot. I am off my game. The changed intro befuddled me. Gyro Step and Win in 6 and Gyro Step and Win in 6 collaborations presented by our friends at Prize Picks. We will talk about later. Yours truly, 6-player projection slate absolutely crushed it on opening day of March Madness. We will talk about that later. A great time for me, but this was a great time for the Bucks and all Bucks fans. I think Giannis is like the player stat line you'd call out who had 30-19 against the Thunder, but this really, I think it was, I would say probably best win of the season, because I think some of the other contenders, it was like best win of the circumstances. Like the Suns game without Giannis was like, oh, that was so impressive. They did that without Giannis. But like that doesn't really, I mean, it means something about the core of the team and everything, but it's more impactful, I think, to see like the Bucks at their full operating strength, which again, outside of AJ Green, they were in this game. I think this is only like the fourth game they've had Khris, Giannis, and Dame since Doc has been coach.
That sounds right.
Which is wild. I thought I saw fourth earlier. It's not been very many, that's for sure. And this lineup looked outstanding at full strength. I think the keys to this game against OKC were the defensive game plan, as you mentioned, where we've seen some progress on that end. We've seen some backsliding on that end, with kind of different road trips and different lineups and everything. But they've basically, their defensive identity has become, I think, all right, who's not going to beat us? That's what it feels like Doc really wants to do. And Rex Kalamian, who is their defensive coordinator who FaceTimes Pat Beverly, it's like, okay, what are we going to do about this player? What are we going to do about that player? And you could see real early in this game, and they did it throughout the whole game. It was like, okay, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander somehow ahead of Giannis in MVP leaderboards. Giannis was more valuable tonight, I will tell you that. Jalen Williams, a.k.a. J-Dub, that Jalen Williams. And to a lesser extent, I think Chet Holmgren. Those guys are not going to get clean looks. They're never going to be unobstructed. There's going to be 2 Bucks or more around them. And I think the key to that for this game was all those guys are pretty good three-point shooters by percentage, but none of them are that's not their go-to shot. They don't want to take a bunch of threes. Maybe Chet does, but I think less so for Shai and J-Dub. Like they want to work in the paint with those middies. And the Bucks were just showing them a ton of bodies and saying, listen, if Josh Giddey and Lou Dort knock down their threes, so be it. We'd rather have them beat us. The funny thing is, Josh Giddey and Lou Dort did knock down their threes. Giddey of 4 for 6 from deep. Dort was never mind. Dort was 1 for 6. Dort had a good start and then fell off the 3-point shot in a big way. But it didn't matter. The Bucks held a slim lead at halftime, and then the second half, the defense really went to the next level. They didn't allow a made field goal for 6.5 minutes to start the second half. Built a lead. They would not surrender the rest of the way. But it's been interesting to see how people react to how they defend now, because I don't think it's really what the Bucks used to do under Bud when they obviously were an excellent defensive team. I think the Bud defense was a machine. I don't think it was adaptable, right? Like we would be frustrated some games where it's like that team is going to take those threes. Like we can't just give up, or that player loves the mid-range. And the Bucks now are like, we're not going to let you do the thing you really want to do. And if you can beat us doing something else, okay, but we're not going to let Shai, ISO Bs with no help and back score 30 points. Shai was 5 for 12 and had 12 points in this game. J-Dub had an amazing game. 18 points on 15 shots. Like manageable stuff. Really, I thought, as you said, this was kind of the culmination of that identity of just being physical and this Thunder team that really couldn't handle physicality. And it was just beautiful to watch, just the team effort. I thought almost everyone who played, maybe everyone who played really, really well in this game.
Yeah, I thought for one, it wasn't just we're highlighting individual defenders. It felt like probably the most convincing and extended display of that as a unit working on a string, taking away. I mean, we saw swarming rotations. We saw the bodies, as you mentioned, crowd like SGA, Jalen Williams, as more so in the second half. And I think to me, you brought out the good comparison because we always thought with Bud, it was always about principles. We'll take away these spots on the floor. It increasingly feels to me where the difference is, you look at those principles under Doc. It almost feels like, okay, you can get what you want, but we're not going to have your main guys get away with it. Like we've seen it with probably lesser examples. Maybe the Sixers with Tyrese Maxey, but obviously no Joel Embiid. There are different examples, but when it's a Thunder team that has emerging stars or a superstar in SGA and the kind of building blocks that you look around okay, these are the easiest things that you could take away from them. And then you can let the Josh Giddeys, the Jalen Williams for a couple quarters, or I don't know who else was kind of cleaning up before that third quarter drought. I feel like that to me
that was kind of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it kind of was what it was.
He ran out of players. You didn't forget anyone. I mean, Isaiah Joe was 2 of 4 from deep. I think the two misses were both blocked by Pat Bev, who had clearly read up on the scouting report on that particular player and what he does. But nobody else on OKC made more than 2 shots. Shai was 5 for 12. Giddey was 7 for 12. Jalen Williams was 8 of 15. Chet 1 for 10. Dort 2 for 8. Nobody else more than 2 makes in the whole game.
Gordon Hayward got swallowed up by a Giannis block early. That was oh yeah.
What are they doing with him? What is going on with him in minutes and some of the young guys on the?
It's probably not a good. It's probably not a good thing that when I first saw him come, when he got substituted into the game, I thought it was Mike Muscala.
I think he would help them more, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's the state of Gordon Hayward. But I just felt with however many days it was since the Nets game, 2 days. Kind of really game plan and scout how they wanted to take the strengths of the Thunder. They did that in a very veteran savvy kind of way of just being as physical as they can be without really the refs. Although it teetered into kind of oh, here we go, ref show, but the Bucks kind of reined it in when needed, and it just we were talking pre-pod. It just highlighted just how structurally flawed this Thunder team is in terms of just playing with physicality, having guys that can be physical. That is, we have gone through those lumps of when the Bucks have tried to go good to great. And it's when you don't have that, it's really apparent at the worst time. And I feel like maybe that is where the Thunder are careening, but the Bucks obviously took advantage of just how big, strong, and physical they are against a Thunder team that didn't really have any answers for them in that way. Yeah,
I mean, and you can say whatever about the regular season records with these teams. I had always liked Denver's chances the most to get out of the West. I mean, I think they're easily the best team in the West to me. But I kind of was liking the Thunder more than Minnesota. And now, I mean, the injury to Towns hurts, but I am kind of like, I don't know if I really trust this Thunder team to win more than a round, depending on who they're going up against. I mean, you think they'll get a play-in team almost certainly, but if that play-in team happens to be the Los Angeles Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, that might be a big problem for this Thunder team that plays extreme. I mean, Giddey's basically their starting four.
Yeah,
that's tiny, and the Bucks took advantage of it all night. I mean, they were going to the post more than we've seen. Bobby Portis. I kind of thought early, after I saw Giannis get several offensive rebounds in the first couple of minutes, he ends with 8 of his 19 boards were offensive. Kind of felt like, this could be a big Bobby Portis game. He only ends up with 1 offensive rebound he got right away after checking in, but he has a huge part of this game as well, despite missing both of his threes. 7 of 12 from 2, was taking it inside all the time, hit Chet Holmgren with the too small that he held down there for a long time. I mean, it was hard to argue with him. Brook Lopez had some nice drives and pick and roll finishes. Giannis, of course. I mean, at one point, the Thunder had all 5 of their players around him, and he still muscled through for the and one and converted it. Like, they just had nothing for the Bucks' physicality, even down to, like, Crowder and Connaughton, who, by the way, the Bucks bench has just been rolling lately. In this game, the first 3 subs were Portis, Crowder, Connaughton. They were incredible. I mean, they were just like all 3 of them on a string, defensively, offensively, always in the right spots. But Crowder and Condon in particular, some amazing off-ball cuts, yes. A lot of finishes, and even then it was like they weren't always totally open, but like Pat C is out physicaling these Thunder wings at the rim and like getting the ball to go in. It's like damn, it's not just like the bigs for the Bucks. It's like everyone is taking it to them. I thought this was, again, you look up and down. I think you could point out if you were like trying to nitpick, Pat Bev 0 for 2, like whatever. That's the Pat Bev experience. That'll happen. 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Like I said, 2 blocks on jump shooters. I thought I had a good game overall. Dame was 4 for 12, got hot a little bit late, ends up with 11 points. I mean, I couldn't find it in me at almost any point to really have a stomachache about Dame's play. I mean, it sucked in the first half, but I didn't think he was playing poorly. They just weren't dropping, and his defense was active all night. But otherwise, I mean, everyone played well. Everyone else shot well and was scoring the ball. And defensively, I mean, you mentioned the rotations earlier. It feels like at times earlier under Doc, it would be like, okay, they rotate once, twice. Oh, there's a missed one. This game, it felt very, very few times they missed one. I mean, they were on a string. They were early. The only wide open shots were, again, the ones where you could kind of feel they were like, okay, Josh Giddey, see what you can do. And he did hit some early. But outside of that, which are almost like planned open shots, they just weren't giving them up. And it was so nice to see this complete of a defensive game from Milwaukee.
Yeah, it honestly is probably something that we hadn't seen at all this year in that, again, convincing way. And perhaps they took advantage of a young Thunder team in that way. But I just thought from whether it was Giannis, just kind of, we saw the multiple blocks that didn't get credited as blocks for Brook, but like there were second effort plays at the rim, meeting them at the summit and all that stuff. And I just thought you mentioned Pat Beverly's blocks. I thought just everybody rotating. Bobby had some good moments of just staying in front of ball handlers too. Like it just felt like any time that the Thunder was like, okay, like let's just keep doing our free flowing, system kind of thing. And again, I could see that state of where they're at and compare it to where the Bucks have been in previous years. Certainly like the first Bud year of like when your good things go away, what do you do? And maybe your team is just not built that way. But now like having from a Bucks perspective, like having that kind of performance where you can win really. I mean, the first half was a really ugly game, but I was not complaining about it because you saw the defense really ramp up in a very significant way that we've seen for minutes or kind of just like runs here and there, but it just wasn't like the way that we saw it over the course of the better part of this game of just really smothering them, locking them down, and playing within a way that felt very kind of translatable for how they could be come playoff time. I know it's 3 to 4 weeks away. So we're kind of like in that mode of like, can you show these things as you're building up towards, when everything's on the line? And that to me is very optimistic of where the Bucks are at and how it, after all this time of this season, just how crazy it's been. It's like, this is a normal basketball team once again. And that's refreshing to talk about after.
It's been great. It's been so nice. And knock on wood here, relatively healthy team at this point in time. Although again, they still couldn't have the full lineup available for at any point. I mean, they haven't at any point since since Khris went out, because they traded off for the Nets game, Giannis and Khris, the Celtics and Nets games, and then AJ Green misses a game. So it's, geez, man, like, come on, let's see all of them. But I kind of expected this to happen. A lot of people, there was like the Gallo doomerism when AJ Green was out. But that's kind of like the Thunder are really good and very small. Kind of think Doc just probably rolls with the 8 or the 9 guys tonight. It doesn't go 10, and that's exactly what happened. And I think realistically, this probably will happen in the playoffs quite a few times. One of my favorite takeaways from this game is, again, just like everyone in the real rotation. I think AJ Green is there, but probably like, again, first out in a playoff series. He's the young guy and not proven. Probably depends how he shoots, frankly. But all of like those 9 guys. So the starters, Portis, Crowder, Connaughton, Patrick Beverley, just like playing really effective basketball. Again, I think this is a point you made on the pod, not before, against a very young, free-flowing, dynamic, very good. I mean, again, best team in the West coming into this game. I think they're like 3-1 against Denver this year, Thunder team. But nobody looked old and slow, right? Like Brook did not look old and slow. He looked strong and forceful and dominant. And the rest of the perimeter players really kept up. Pat Connaughton with bizarrely good defense on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, the foul that shouldn't have been a foul, whatever. But even before that, I saw somebody in our Discord, gspn.info, for that and all of our other links to join. Somebody commented like Shai's intentional slowing down plays into Pat's hands because he can't go any faster anyway. And I was like, I kind of think that's true.
Well, that's where that is, honestly, that was a point when watching this where I felt like his like herky jerkiness, like he lulls defenders to sleep. But when you're alert and you're just kind of like watching his movements and everything like that, it's really kind of, I'm not saying it's easy to keep up with him, but I felt like a guy like Jalen Williams, I was more worried about him just with like, a lot of his early points were stuff that he was just cleaning up or like, just kind of like beating them to the spot. Like, you know what I mean? Like having that kind of speed threat, especially with the ball, like that is a big advantage. And that, I mean, we don't even have to look that far. Like that has been things that the Bucks have struggled with defensively this year. And a guy like SGA kind of doesn't fit that mold as great as he is. Like I'm not trying to disparage it, but it's a different kind of rhythm that I feel like the Bucks are more acclimated to kind of beat.
I also think their mindset defensively, not having the true on-ball stopper, their mindset on D is basically like make them hit tough shots. Like Malik Beasley and Pat Connaughton are not going out there like, hey, we're just going to lock up and block Shai, right? Like we're not going to beat him to his spot. Like no, hit up, like go ahead, like hit a bunch of tough, and like Shai hit some really tough ones. J-Dub again, like I just want to. I mean, I remember his draft class, the Marjan draft. I thought he could be in the Bucks range. I mean, he was getting mocked pretty late. And I was like excited about that prospect, but I wasn't like, oh, he'll be a star player. And I was like, oh, he could be a fun wing. He could be like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like Gary Harris, like before he got hurt. Like I thought he could be that. And he's just awesome. Like, oh my God. Like nothing was going right for the Thunder outside of the Giddy thing. And he was just like, doesn't matter. I'm going to make a ton of shots anyway. Wasn't really open for any of them. Really impressed me in this game. Not that he needed my stamp, but a really good player. And then Crowder hitting shots again has been we all know he's streaky. I almost hope he cools down again in the next like 5 to 6 games and then heats up again toward playoffs. I feel like we're pretty far out still. I mean, we're close overall, but in terms of a shooting streak, but hit all of his 4 shots. Again, some good cuts, hit both of his threes, really playing confidently. But I feel like we've had these moments where it feels like this team is not deep, But right now, it's like, oh, they have 10 guys I would trust to start a playoff series. Again, throwing AJ Green with these 9. And I think a lot of these you'd probably trust to go pretty far in a playoff series. They know what to do. Like, they're vets. They've been around before. They've been in big games before. Crowder's played in the finals. Obviously, all the Bucks guys are since 21 have played in the finals. I mean, maybe the ones you're most worried about is like a Malik Beasley, but this is a game where his shot didn't fall at all early. I was kind of like, oh, is this going to be an ugly Beasley game? But his defense on SGA was really good throughout. He dove for a loose ball, and then he did hit some threes late. So I'm a little up and down sometimes with him in terms of like playoff trustworthiness. But then he'll have these moments where it's like, oh, that's kind of a dog play right there in the best sense. And he was that guy tonight.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of how he is. It's go big or go home. Yeah, I mean, like, there's not really. I think his defense, as that was the biggest thing why I didn't think that he was going to be the 5th starter by any means coming into the year under a different coach. but my whole point of view of him has changed, where he can live in those games where his shot is not falling because his defense has improved that much. Now he can still get cooked, depending on who the Bucks see in the playoffs. Like, that is a different story when we might be talking about Tyrese Halliburton or Tyrese Maxey or even Jimmy Butler. But I think for me, and how I view Malik especially, is if he's just playing, if he can kind of live with a bad shooting night or not getting to his spots the right way. I thought he actually had a very important possession where guy running off the 3-point line, like it was like a corner shot, so that's his bread and butter. He took like one dribble, like baseline, put up a floater. Like, that's not like he can do that. It's not something that he often shows, but I thought, to me, like, that is something you're going to have to do a lot in the playoffs. Like, now we're getting, not to keep repeating myself, but we're getting in playoff mode of like, they're going to try to take that away from you. What can you do to kind of counteract that? And I thought for him, that's been huge. Pat had a similar thing, not that, he's as prolific of a shooter. He did have a shot. He was 1 for 5 from 3. He's finishing so well around the rim. Like, he is. That
drive when he got ran off was incredible. I mean, it was like the Thunder defender wasn't even there.
I thought it's always been an underrated part of his game, but it's a role player, can come and go.
Yeah.
And I think now, like, we're seeing games where he's just like, oh, you're going to go up and under, or like kind of like hang in the air a little bit. Like, he's a lot more explosive now than he has been, was earlier in the year, which is huge. Yeah. And I just think his confidence with the ball, whether he's kind of playing the dunker area or expecting like Giannis, like bounce passes in the painted area, I just think he's a lot more comfortable in those spots where, we just kind of think like, spot up and shoot. If you don't make it, then we'll find someone else on the bench that can,
right.
Kind of thing. So
yeah, I remember his finishing kind of like about 2-3 years ago. Rohan and I really noticed like, oh, he's really converting a lot at the rim right now. And then this season, the next thing for him, for Connaughton, was like, oh, he's like kind of their backup point guard sometimes. Like, he handles the ball quite a bit. He's actually kind of good, like running these screen and rolls. He had I think one bad pass to Bobby. The other one was Bobby's fault when he passed back out. But it looked like the Thunder were maybe going to make a run late in the second half or later, and it didn't end up happening. But overall, I think like he's actually done a pretty good job when they do need someone to just like start the pick and roll and get the ball to Giannis in position or kick back out to a shooter. And like you say, if teams totally ignore him, which, let's face it, even if he's driving with the ball, teams will kind of ignore him sometimes. It's like, oh, we have to be, oh, he's going to pass to Giannis. He's going to pass to Dame. Pat will just be like, oh, okay, if I can get to the rim, I'll do it. And I'll probably fall over and get hit in the face and no call, but I will finish as well because I have to through contacts. I have no choice. But yeah, I think he has started to play a really strong all-around game, not just thrive as a shooter. And again, I think that is a credit to the doctor. Or Stock Rivers is what you were calling yourself when we were doing the Bucks stock market earlier. A credit to Stock Rivers, who like pretty much from day one was like, we're going to need Pat. Like, we need him to be confident. I think it was Pat specifically, but I kind of look at it as extending to all of these vets. I think like the flip side of, oh, Doc plays the vets. Doc loves the vets. Stock is getting a bunch out of Milwaukee's vets, and I think this makes them a much stronger team than if they were having to rely on rookie Andre Jackson Jr. and Marjon Beauchamp to play big roles, just knowing those guys have never had a real role in the playoffs before. It's such a grab bag. It's such a big moment. And now the Bucks, I think, are in a much better position, having guys who have been there before, won there before. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think I said it on the most recent Win 6 a couple weeks ago, but the thing about where the Bucks were, especially under Griffin, and I don't think it is the biggest knock that you can levy against him, and obviously why he's not the coach anymore. But the individual talent, especially towards the top of the roster, you could say, well, they're 30-11. Why are they in this spot? Why are they behind Boston or whatever it was? And you can be well, you can look at the individual brilliance of all this stuff, but these guys had to kind of follow their lead or catch up to them. I don't feel like we're there anymore. We're far past from it, even with injuries kind of, maybe taking Khris away, although obviously he's played the last couple of games, and thankfully. I feel like we have built towards going back to, obviously this is a normal team again, but it does feel a lot more complimentary in a way that I just think I don't think the Pat Bev trade was the only thing that did it. And obviously, bringing Doc was a big part about that too. But it just feels like the biggest hope that we could think of, dating back to that point or dating back to when they got Doc, was just finding everything kind of seamlessly going into or fitting one another again.
Yeah.
And it feels really good to say that that works. It's not going to always work, especially against the top teams or, over the course of a 7-game playoff series. But where they are right now, it just feels a lot more organic than rather than it's there's just always kind of something that you just can't quite put your finger on, and that you just be it's still working. Now it's okay, I can point to these, the defense tonight or, whatever. I'm forgetting it.
I want to talk about the offense in a moment here. I think the ball movement has been a big thing under Doc. I think the word you keep using, I think what you're talking about is just team. They look like a team again, where there were so many points in the first, again, the great record that Griffin had. It was because Giannis has 60 points and we're barely hanging in there against the Pacers. It felt so driven by a couple players, and then Beasley hit a bunch of shots, so he's involved. But otherwise, we're just going to cycle through the whole bench to see who can try and play this defense, and we're just going to run around and just score a bunch and not be able to defend at all. They feel like a more sustainable basketball team now, and I feel like I've had that sense for a while, and just watching it tonight and seeing literally every player be important and seeing them defend so well against a great offense, I think it really it's a great feeling. Another great feeling, Jordan, is playing Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. The easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. I'm flustered because I did not do 2 player stats. I did 6 player stats on Thursday, the first day of the NCAA tournament. I knew nothing about any of these players. I had good feelings and did a little bit of research, and I won my first ever March Madness or NCAA Prize Picks play. Tyson Walker, more than 23 points, rebounds, assists. He had 24. Pretty close. I'm watching all these games. I'm just going crazy at the end. Day Grant, who I was telling you before we got on, only got here on free throws, that he was the inbounder of 2 consecutive intentional fouls, but they got it back to him both times. I had more than 22.5 points, rebounds, assists. He had 24. Enrique Freeman of the Akron Zips, more than 27.5 points, rebounds, assists. He had 36. So shout out to Enrique, who did not make me sweat. Caleb Love, Arizona guard, more than 25.5 points, rebounds, assists. He had 33. Melvin Council Jr. of Wagner, more than 22.5. He had 23. And then Jordan Lathan ended with 26 points, rebounds, assists. The projection was 20.5. So a big 6-way W. A couple of them extremely close. And I will say, it certainly adds an extra level of excitement tuning into these games. And I don't follow college basketball very closely. I don't know anything about Wagner, but I am sitting here like, let's go, Melvin Council Jr. That's my guy right there. I try not to get mad, though, when players don't do well, because I've seen, people get too upset, I think, when things don't go well. I don't want to do that. But anyway, if you want to join me and, listen. Doing all 6 is tough, but you don't have to because they have Flex Play, which is nice. But download the app today. Use code Eurostep for a first deposit match up to $100. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Download the app, code Eurostep, GYROSTEP, first deposit match up to $100. Only at Prize Picks. The offense. So the first half, the Bucks shot extremely poorly. Both teams did, as you mentioned. It was not like a beautiful offensive showcase. It was a beautiful defensive showcase. But I honestly did think like the shots they were getting were pretty good. I think Crowder knocked down a couple. Beasley, I don't think, hit a 3 in the first half, or maybe hit 1. Dame had a tough first half shooting the ball. And again, his overall stats aren't great for the whole game. And Khris Middleton as well. Khris struggled quite a bit in the first half. But I was kind of watching it. I think Pat missed a couple in that half as well, counted in. Watching it like, oh, this is fine. Like, they're not having trouble with OKC's defense. I don't think. It didn't feel like it. It's just, they're not hitting them right now. And they're defending at a very high level. And I do feel like the healthy games, or at least the healthy-ish games, it feels like they're getting more toward the ball movement and more toward Dame on the ball more, which I know it's always a delicate balance with Giannis and who's going to be on ball and off ball and everything else. But it does feel like their ball movement's at an awesome place. I mean, one possession that stood out was Dame off the court in the second half. They send 2 to Giannis at half court. I think he pings it to Beverly, who pings it to Connaughton, who pings it for Crowder, wide open 3. And it just looks so effortless. Like, they were not rattled. You could just tell, like, okay, we've worked on this. Our guys will get doubled because we have superstars. Here's what we do. Like, Beverly was up like by half court. So a very easy kind of outlet. Connaughton in the middle with 2 options for 2 defenders, either drive or 2 3-point shooters, and he took the one that was open. And it just feels like they've been doing a lot more of that. The ball movement overall was great in this game, and it's been really nice to see them. Again, it's not like, okay, can Dame and Giannis do everything and then a couple guys hit shots if they pass out? Like, no, like the team will go out and execute. I think that's probably how you have to play, even if they'll rely a ton, of course, on those stars in the biggest moments of playoff games.
Yeah, I thought we kind of saw that too against Brooklyn, where they were beating them mid-court, and it wasn't like they were trying to take advantage of, or it wasn't fully like they were trying to take advantage of like Giannis and bench or Dame and bench lineups and take away the best player or the guy that's going to have the ball in their hands. They were kind of doing that like sporadically, but it would be against like full strength lineups. Today was more so like, oh, it's Giannis, Pat Bev, Pat Connaughton, Bobby, and whoever else.
Crowder.
Yeah, Crowder. Like, Giannis is the best ball handler. We're going to take him out of the play, so then all the rest of the 4 have to beat him. And they just know how to play that well. Like, that's where, like, the kind of the IQ or, certainly with Khris coming back too, like, there's just an added level of just guys just knowing what to do when those situations present themselves. And I think too, like, I know Dame was relatively quiet. It wasn't his best game, but to me, like, he's making reads. He's making passes that feel, one, a lot like a guy that is starting to know how people want the ball in what ways. And just like, we always talked like the scoring and like, obviously like just the threat of his shooting being so great for Giannis. And now, like, the fact that we see him more of a driver, but he knows how to hit guys in, running to their spots or running to the cup or anything like that. I just feel like it's really kind of gelled in a way that, like, I think of Damian Lillard not just as a scorer, but as a passer. And it's, kind of goes back to like the Malik point of like, what can you do when your shot's not falling, or like the best thing that we look to, or, you being able to score or anything like that. When you don't have that, you still like give like a positive contribution to the game. And I think that, to me, for Dame is like, plus his defensive chops just looking a lot better than he's maybe has ever been in his career.
I love his continued light pushback on this. He was asked about it, I think after the Boston game, or maybe it was Phoenix, but he's like, in my career, typically in big moments, I've been pretty good. It's like he says basically along the lines of that. It's like we got you, Dame. You're playing well. That's all we're saying. His great passes are different than Giannis's in that Giannis's great passes is usually like physically, this is a lot of things about Giannis. Like physically, obviously it's a great mental thing, the passes Giannis makes, but he will like jump and wrap around someone or, no look over the shoulder. It's like, how is he even strong enough to do that? Or how does he do that in midair? Dame has he had one to Bobby, I think, in like the corner or on the wing for a three that he did not make. But like the way he can throw a pass full strength through traffic, like heavy traffic. He's never in light traffic. It's Dame. It's just so impressive. And he had some amazing passes in this game. The defense was pretty stout as well. One of my favorite passes in this game was not very impressive, but I do think it's something that he can probably look to do more. He was in traffic, and he kind of saw Giannis cutting, and basically just stopped and just like tossed it up to him from like 2 feet away. And of course, as we've said before, like Giannis doesn't even need an advantage. If he's just a normal one-on-one moving toward the rim with the ball, he's going to score. Like he's not stoppable. And Giannis did score. And I kind of wonder if more often it puts your defense in your transition defense in a tough situation. But on some of these Dame drives, maybe Giannis just like cut more often. Because if they do swarm toward Dame, I mean, we've seen Giannis gets the ball with one person between him and the rim. It's probably a bucket, especially if the defense is tilted a little toward Dame. So I like to see that, and I hope to see more of those. But yeah, I mean, his playmaking acumen in a game where he's 4 for 12 and really could not get his twos or his threes, he ends up 2 for 5 thanks to some late makes, but his twos were a struggle. Did also have 6 rebounds, 5 assists, just 1 turnover, and a team high plus 18, which has kind of been a trend lately for Dame.
Yeah, it's all building towards something with him, especially of just kind of like it doesn't feel like forced. It feels reassured, not to keep hitting on this thing, but he does just there's a certain gelling that is starting to take root. And again, it's really nice.
It's been fantastic. I mean, I think it's so notable to us because they have, outside of that West Coast trip, just played a lot of outstanding basketball lately. I mean, post All-Star, They run off 6 wins. They have the bad West Coast trip. Lose to the Warriors. They just get smoked. Lose that tough D-Lo game to the Lakers. Beat the Clippers. And then lose that another brutal one to the Kings. But then since then again, the nice Sixers win. Suns win without Giannis. Very close Boston loss without Giannis. The Nets win, which was whatever. And then this great Thunder win. I'm expecting a pretty good game for the Lakers as well. And then I'm very interested to see their 3-game road trip after this next Lakers game on Tuesday. They play New Orleans, Atlanta, Washington. So not West Coast by any means, but still, it is their longest remaining road trip. They then have 5 straight home games after that, which we'll get to standings and seeding watch in a second. But that bodes pretty well the way they've played at Fiserv all year. The other member of we didn't talk too much about Giannis. He looks healthy again, I would say. He was probable with the hamstring coming into this game. I mean, had some amazing alley-oop finishes. I mean, Khris is throwing those things to him. Khris missed a couple, but he probably tried to throw 4 or 5 oops to Giannis. I think he got to 3 of them. But again, 30, 19, and 4. He physically dominated the Thunder. They had no answer for him, really on either end. I mean, there's the traffic the Bucks put at the rim with him, Brooke, and Bobby. Had a huge impact the whole game. But, I mean, he's awesome. I think he's the best player in the league. I think it's him and Joker are close. I don't think anyone is close to those two, personally.
No, I wouldn't say this year. I think that is... It felt good seeing him. I was at the Brooklyn game, and you could just kind of tell he's working his way back. It wasn't just an explosion thing. It was like, oh, this guy's gassed after like 5-6 minutes. It's like, oh, they need to put Bobby in a little earlier to kind of get Giannis going again. I thought tonight was not really... He was exerting plenty of effort and energy on both ends of the floor, and I didn't really see him like to, we didn't see the Giannis putting his hands on his knees, kind of like, that kind of level of tiredness or anything like that.
And he played quite a bit too. I mean, almost 34 minutes, and this game had garbage time. They didn't call it quits until only about 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
So wasn't too much smaller, but like if it's a competitive game, he's probably playing, mid to high 30s, probably 37 minutes at least. So definitely nice to see that. And then Khris bounced back pretty nicely for a player who did not have a good first half at all. Ends with his second career triple-double. Checked back in toward the very end with the garbage time guys. Knocked down the shot he needed to finish 11, 10, and 10. 5 turnovers. Kept dribbling it off his foot, which I don't even get as mad about. Like, it goes out of bounds. It sucks, but at least it's not live ball, ugly pass. But does end up 5 for 11 from the field. Had some really tough twos, as he's wont to do. And again, I still think one of the biggest takeaways, still looks pretty damn good defensively. I mean, has been a question mark for a couple of years at that end just with all the injuries. But since he's come back this latest time, I think has actually held up pretty well from the jump, like against Phoenix right away. That's obviously a big test given the 3 players they have. Had a nice block in this game. Like, he's just adds so much on, but he's just a stabilizer. He just stabilizes them in so many ways on both ends. Continues to do that even through not a good game for him. I mean, this is actually a crazy game. They absolutely destroy the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I was going to say, like,
Khris and Dame did not shoot shots so poorly.
Giannis, Pat, and Bobby are the only ones that shot 50% or more. They had 33 assists on 49 made field goals, though, and they were 11 or 34 from 3. Like, it is a very, like, Rorschach-looking box score. Like, oh, there's really bad things that you can see from here. It's like, these are not, like, overwhelming performances, but then you just, like, oh, their defense was that good of just, like,
yeah.
I know they talked about it multiple times on the broadcast, but it's like the least amount of points the Thunder scored this season. Yep. SGA, I think, is the second lowest amount of points he scored this season in a game. Like, it just shows you, even on a game where their offense is humming, but not like a machine, especially in the first half, their defense is that overwhelming and that just smothering that they can overcome those, woes or things that we just be like, oh, it wasn't all there tonight kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, the Giannis scores 30. The next leading scorer for the Bucks was Bobby with 15. But the flip side to the Rorschach point is they had 7 different players in double figures, and Bees had 8 points. So basically the top 8, everyone except for Beverly in the rotation, was scoring at least a bit and relatively efficiently. Not overwhelmingly, as you point out, but although they weren't a bunch of players over 50%, like the only one under 45%, or no, Dame was 30. Like, Dame and Khris are under 50%. Brooke is at 45% too. Pat Bev is 0 for 2, but the rest of the guys in the rotation were around or above 50%. Yeah, Jay was 100%, 4 for 4 for him. Not bad when you can do that. It really was. It was one of those, like, it wasn't an overwhelmingly great performance for almost anyone, but it was an overwhelmingly great performance kind of in the aggregate from what they all did together, which again is like oftentimes the most fun ways to watch your team play well is if it's like, oh, everyone on the team, like, they're clicking as a team.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it was kind of good to see this kind of performance of, like,
yeah,
when we talked about, like, the beating the bad teams bad, like, down bad teams under the Bud era, it would just be like 23s or the night that they just shot like an NBA record 28 threes. Tonight was like, yeah, we didn't have it for, good chunks of it. And we will still just slow you down where you cannot get through us or score for 6 straight minutes in the third quarter, Oklahoma City. So, like, that to me was like the different, just kind of, I like seeing that flavor, that flavor profile.
Well, something we talked about is they get up for these kind of games. Best team in the West, like, oh, it's going to be a different level of intensity. Same against Boston, where a lot of people thought Boston would just run away with that game, and the Bucks never let them do that, and they really made it a game late in that one. And I think it's kind of just wild to me that they've built this team that can defend at a high level with Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley as the guards, and then Khris, who, again, has defended pretty well overall since coming back, but at this point in his career is not an elite defender. I think it really shows you how much impact that Giannis and Brooke, when he is in a good matchup and playing well, can have. and just I don't know. It really kind of bewilders me. Like, I think a lot of times I hear people talk about the Bucks, and they're like, they have just no one who can guard on the perimeter. I'm like, well, Jay Crowder's been okay, but that's, I guess kind of true. But they like it, when they guard poorly, it doesn't even always seem like it's because of that reason. It's more like, oh, they didn't rotate well in this game. I don't know. I think maybe it's just the takeaway should be give big credit to the team defense and big credit to Malik and Dame, who are just busting their asses to not be horrible defenders this year. And I'm not that that's all it takes, but maybe that's a bigger part of it than people acknowledge.
It's certainly been bigger under Doc.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And the thing too is that it is such a massive change from where it was with Drew, where we can think about putting him on like LeBron. Not that would work out well in those instances, but you can go from that to like a Steph to, name more dynamic guards until it's Jimmy Butler in the first round of the playoff series. But I just feel like, yeah, it is different. And you're kind of like looking at the perimeter defense as being the better, or the some of those parts being better than whatever I'm trying to say. That classic phrase. But I think that's where it's trending towards of like, these guys are just more locked in collectively, and it's just reassuring to see them kind of know when to play in a scheme that is built to their strengths, or to get the best engagement out of them, rather than like just how it was before.
Oh,
as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do. With the win, so we can move to do you have anything else? Actually, do you have anything else that stood out from this game?
Actually, I did. It is kind of worth Dave Kane, who is filling in for Lisa tonight. He mentioned that tonight, Giannis has the most total points in a season.
Oh yeah,
kind of wild.
That was an insane. That was a great pull from him and the Valley Stats team.
And like, you're just
in one of his seasons.
Yes, in one of his seasons, and obviously he's playing more now than he traditionally played under Bud. Like, notwithstanding the last kind of couple games or the last week aside, it's just like, it's crazy just to like, go back to like Giannis fawning mode of just like how developed he is as a scorer, where it felt like tonight he just like, it was kind of like classic rampaging Giannis, but also just the fact that he's cleaning up and like, it's just automatic within a certain era where you can be like, that's a bucket. Like, the fact that he's still like over 60, like shooting Wilt Chamberlain like efficiency, and just be like, yeah, he's scoring that many twos, that he has the most points in a season for, over his career. And we have like
11 games
left. Like, that's wild.
I think he's almost got it locked in at this point. I keep tracking like, oh, is the 60% part in jeopardy? Probably not. He shot 72% now, and coming into the game was at 61.4%. So that number is going to rise a little bit. It is pretty funny. So this is now his second highest points per game ever. Last year was a little bit higher. He's playing more minutes per game than he has since all the way back in the 17-18 season. He's at 35 minutes per game, mostly just, I think, because they've needed him so much, because there's been so much instability and so many problems that really Giannis himself has papered over. But that season, I believe, is the record he just broke, his own record for points per game, 2017-18. He played in 75, scored 2,014 points. So coming into this game, he had 1,993 and then dropped 30. So yeah, he is now in the 2020s. So he's going to set a pretty high mark for himself comparatively. Wouldn't mind if he didn't need to play as many minutes next season, to be honest, but he is obviously playing great basketball. The funny thing is, I kind of wowed myself looking this up. Do you know where this season ranks for Giannis in terms of points per 36 minutes for his career?
Oh, probably playing more doesn't help.
Doesn't help. I felt like per minute he was scoring at a pretty crazy rate, because this is by far his most efficient season. Again, I think Dame has a ton to do with that. I mean, again, 61% from the field is way higher than he's ever been before. I thought it was going to be higher than it was, to be honest.
I'll say fifth.
Yeah, you're very close. Fourth. So 1920, of course, the season that got canceled and then resumed when that Bucks team was just a juggernaut. He scored 34.9 points per 36 minutes, which is just ridiculous. Also, his complete line that season, basically 35, 16, 6.5. Just bonkers. The next highest was last season, 22-23, 34.8. So right there last season in terms of his best ever. And then the 21-22 season, 32.5 or 32.7, points per 36 minutes. And then this season in fourth, 31.5. But again, on 61% from the field, which is just ludicrous. His true shooting percentage this year, 65.4, which is a career high, of course. Just obviously. I mean, look at the efficiency on the field goals. I mean, whatever impact the free throws and the threes have, what he's doing at the rim right now is just unimpeachable. That was fun. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Fun playing with Giannis stats. That's that segment of the pod.
Some of the bench reactions to his dunks in this game were so good. I think there was one where it was like Crowder, Beverly, and Thanasis just going crazy when he had one. And that's always fun to see Bucks teammates enjoying what Giannis is doing out there.
There was one where I think it was like the first half, so things are kind of not falling as much for the Bucks then. And he just ran through Chet.
Yeah.
It was not a fun time for Chet, old boy.
I expected a little more from Chet in this game, to be honest. I mean, I knew he wasn't thick, but I thought defensively, like his length, like he'll be able to really impact the game. He did not impact the game on either end. I mean, the Bucks looked at him and saw like meat. They saw food the whole game. I mean, again, Bobby Portis, the post up where he too smalled him. I mean, sometimes it almost bothers me. Sometimes guys do the too small when they just like, they finish over a guy, but it wasn't physical necessarily, right? They just go up and it's like, okay, fine, fair enough, but not really. Bobby moved him like 10 feet. Like Bobby, every shoulder bump was moving Chet 3.5, 4 feet, and he just finishes the hook. And I was like, that's an earned one. That is like, he was literally the 7-foot guy with a 7'6" wingspan was literally too small for you in that moment.
That's where he's the wacky armed inflatable tube man. Just like, oh yeah, you're that skinny. And yeah, we'll see how that progresses for him.
I feel like I thought he and Wemby were a little closer earlier in the season, and I no longer think that. Just overall as players, yeah.
I
mean, Wemby by himself against the Bucks was like a huge issue. I mean, obviously it's different with the team.
That might have been like a catalyst for everything that we've seen since then, because now it's like, he had a 5x5 and it's the second quarter because he just touched
literally. Yeah, it's like, okay, another 32, 16, 9, 6, 4 game. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's not normal. I've seen people, I saw it yesterday. Somebody was like, hot take. He'll be the best player in the world by his third season. I was like, is that even hot? I feel like that's almost mild. I mean, how far is he off, really? I mean,
he might be if the Spurs take off next year, he would probably be MVP.
He's going to be in the combo. Yeah. I mean, he's like the stuff he does is just not done. I keep saying like Giannis and Dame, let's maximize these next couple of years here because the league is going to be in a tough spot. They have 1 billion draft picks coming in. The Thunder have to be looking over too, kind of like, damn, they got how many picks and they have Wemby already? Anyway, the Bucks with the win. Enough Western Conference. Let's talk about the East. Secure their place on the 2 seed because the Cleveland Cavaliers, who something's not right in the water in Cleveland, they got smoked, lost 121-84 to the Miami Heat, soundly defeated. They lost, the Bucks win. They are now 3 games ahead in the loss column and 2.5 games overall. The loss column is the important one for Bucks Cavs, though, as we've covered on the show. The Cavs do own the tiebreaker. Bucks and Cavs split their regular season series, but the Cavs win it on division record. So, actually, the Central Division winner will be decided by how these teams finish as well. If they have the same record, it will be the Cavs, and they will be the 2 seed or above the Bucks. And if it's the Bucks, they will win the Central yet again, and they will be the 2 seed. So it's looking good right now. The Cavs dealing with Donovan Mitchell injury and some other injuries. They've been pretty banged up all year. They overcame it for a while. They have not been playing well at all. The Knicks now actually only half a game back of Cleveland. So despite all their injuries, OG Anunoby still out, Julius Randle still out. They are playing much better basketball, and they are now sniffing. The Bucks, despite having a game left to go against the Knicks, are already won the season series 3-1 thanks to the in-season tournament. So if you're wondering about that potential tiebreaker, that one's looking pretty good for Milwaukee. The Knicks would have to finish with a better record. And then the Magic only 1 game behind Cleveland. So for all the talk earlier about how far will the Bucks fall in the standings and are they going to have to go through the play-in and everything else, the Bucks now have a wider gap between themselves and 3 than the Cavs do between themselves in 3 and 5. So Milwaukee's place is starting to really firm up here. Before we get to who they could see in the first round, do you really think there's a shot that Milwaukee ends up with anything but the 2 seed in the playoffs this year?
No, I think 2 is probably, I would say 90% locked in.
And to be clear, there's an 100% chance they will not get 1. That's not the question I'm asking you. I know you didn't think so. Just in case anyone thinks that I'm foolish enough to think they would ever catch Boston, who is 11 games up in the loss column, they will not. The Celtics will be the 1 seed in the NBA and in the Eastern Conference, without a doubt. Their goals are pretty much all playoffs at this point, although they were flirting with some net rating records. I think the Bucks game hampered that a little bit for them. We'll see how they end up. But yeah, I thought the Cavs had a pretty good shot for a while. Now I almost wonder, do the Knicks have the best shot to take it from Milwaukee?
They might. I mean, obviously having the head-to-head helps. Cleveland sliding in a very inopportune time and battling health as they have for much of the year. It's not great either. I would even maybe say Orlando's kind of been surging sneakily.
Yeah.
You can overtake Cleveland. Cleveland might fall down as far as 5. I don't think 6 is in the realm of possibility, but
no, the Pacers are a full 3 games back. Although, I mean, that's the same loss column difference. That's the same loss column difference as there is between 2 and 3.
It is.
So, I mean, if we think it's possible that the Knicks or Cavs can catch the Bucks, I guess by the same right, we should think it's possible that the Pacers could catch up. Although, I mean, the Pacers, the thing is, you also have to factor in how these teams are playing.
Yeah.
The Bucks overall playing quite well, especially when they're healthy. The Pacers have not been doing that. Neither have the Cavs. The Knicks have. The Magic certainly have. Really, those are, outside of Boston, those are kind of the only teams doing that in the East. The Bulls were kind of feisty for a while. They've lost 2 straight games. The Raptors are 0-10 in their last 10. That has nothing to do with the playoff picture, but it is just fun to talk about how bad the Raptors have been playing.
Very bad.
Yeah. But they have fun jersey swaps, so there's that.
I was about to say, I don't want to see, I don't know.
Jalen Suggs missed an opportunity in that exchange. That's all I'll say. Okay.
I'll let that
all right. All right. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sound it out. I think so as well. I think it's very likely the Bucks will get 2, which means they will play the winner of the first play-in game. So it's all now in the new fangled system. 7 and 8 play. The winner is 7. The loser plays the winner of the 9-10 game for the right to go into Boston, which good luck. Please be Miami. That's all I'll say on that. Please be. The Pacers have played them well as well, but I don't have any faith. I honestly just don't have much faith in the Pacers, period, lately. They've weirdly been kind of bad since the Siakam deal, which I thought the opposite would happen. I think the Halliburton injury is a big factor there. He has played just very bad compared to his standard. They are on a 2-game winning streak, though, so things aren't looking all down for them. But anyway, the 3 teams that realistically seem like they have a shot to be at the 7th seed right now are the Indiana Pacers, currently in 6th, the Miami Heat, and the Philadelphia 76ers, who are tied at 39 and 22, currently the 7 and 8. So as it stands right now, It would be Heat Sixers in Miami. Winner goes to Milwaukee. Loser plays the Bulls or Hawks to go to Boston. Let's just, for now, do Pacers, Heat, Sixers, because the Pacers, as I mentioned, 2 games behind the Magic in 5th, only 1 game ahead of those other 2 teams, so they're really right in it. This could still be Orlando. This could still be maybe the Cavs, although I doubt it. And I really refuse to entertain the notion that the Bulls or Hawks could play good enough to get themselves into the conversation here. They're in the play-in, but they could never be 7. They are 5 and 7.5 games, respectively, out of 8th. And they just suck. So we're not going to talk about them. Pacers, Heat, Sixers. Let's do one at a time. Who would you like to see the most?
I will also add this for clarity.
Okay.
Pacers play the Heat one more time for the other season. They also play the Hawks and Bulls. Not that again,
if it matters, things are going real wrong for Indiana.
Really bad. Philly also plays the Heat one more time before the other season. And actually, both teams also play the Cavs. Not that one.
That could certainly matter.
It could matter. To your question, I think this is a holy trinity of panic for Bucks fans in a lot of ways. I mean, can't take the cake. It's not even a close.
No, I agree.
It's not close to the other 2.
Yeah.
But the Sixers, in terms of like, will Embiid be healthy enough? He's certainly going to play. It's the season. But will he be healthy enough, and will he be able to kind of get back into where he was? I'm never going to doubt someone as great as him, but it is a very tricky injury to come back from, especially for a big guy that has had a lot of these injuries come at similar times.
At this time. Yeah. Literally, like this is kind of
Doc Rivers knows this very well with Joel Embiid.
This is literally the knock on Embiid, is he is never consistently healthy to dominate games like he does in the regular season and the postseason. Here we are again. Like the excuses, but I'm not saying like he's faking it or it's unfortunate that he's hurt, but like, I mean, it matters. I mean, if you're going to be in that best in the world convo and you're never at your best in the playoffs, that is fair to hold against you. It's unfortunate for Embiid, but it is fair. I agree with you in that the Heat are probably, I think they're just by default the scariest until they're eliminated from the playoffs, just because like they looked dead last year, and I confidently said sweep, and they beat the Bucks in 5. Like
it's like the end of every Halloween movie, or like you think you killed Michael Myers, and then
he's back.
Look over, it's like, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's like,
yeah,
I'm done watching Halloween Resurrection.
Yeah.
I just want to watch my Bucks play a normal playoff team.
Tyler Hero gets hurt in the first game, and their team sucks, and they hate each other, and oh look, they're in the finals. Like, can't count them out ever. Although I will say, the Bucks and Heat have been on a cycle every other time they meet in the playoffs, so by that logic, it should be good for Milwaukee. But I do think they're the team you probably have to fear the most. I'm kind of torn from there, just because I think there's such a little chance that Embiid is able to play well in the playoffs. Because like conditioning in general, like even if he's fully healed from it's a knee issue for a 7-footer, a big 7-footer. That's a big if, I would say. But even if, like physically, the knee feels great. Just the conditioning wise, for the amount of attention he gets and how much he has to do for that team, I just find it really hard to imagine that in a month from now, we're seeing, wow, whoever they match up with, the Sixers, wow, they look great. They're a great team. They're firing on all cylinders. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It's unfortunate, but that's where I'm at with Philly. Indiana's just like played really uninspiring basketball, but I feel like it's more likely that Halliburton and Siakam can get on the same page and both play well together than it is that Philly has Maxey and Embiid playing very well. So at that point, I just kind of rank them. I think Miami's the one you least want to see. And again, they've looked dead half the year. Doesn't matter. They'll be there. Indiana next, and then Philly. Although I said today, I honestly don't even care which ones the Bucks match up with. Like I think all three have their own sort of bugaboos. They should be able to beat all three. If you can't beat any of them, then you weren't going to beat Boston anyway. I don't think. Again, maybe that's not true for Miami, but I kind of think like what better way, as they did in 21, is there to start the playoffs than going out, getting some revenge on Miami, and kind of establishing yourself as, oh, now that's they dispatched that team that easily. Now nobody wants to play them in a series.
Yes, I would say iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
I would lean towards that way. And it's not the same Heat team. I know they're also battling some injuries. Jimmy Butler's been good, but not like great. It doesn't feel like they are hitting the second half kind of what they were doing last year. And I know they made some moves, and they're I would say they're a more talented team. It doesn't feel like it's like Jimmy Butler and occasionally Kevin Love. Bale's been playing better and stuff like that. Like, it does. I don't know. They're just there's. It's always something wrong with them, and then it's like they figured it out overnight.
I am more than usual skeptical of them putting it together because their roster balance is really bad.
It is, yeah.
Rozier, Hero, like Patty Mills plays a bunch. Like, they're very small, and without being like elite shooters, like Josh Richardson gets run. He's not a big guy either. Like, they do feel like a team where it's like you look at that team, and it's like, okay, the Bucks could defend them, and what are they doing about Giannis and Dame? Like, seriously. So we'll see what happens if that does end up being the matchup. It's not one that I'm like terrified of. It's certainly not any of these teams. Like, you can't manipulate the standings because of play-in and how close those teams are, but I certainly wouldn't try. I mean, I'd rather face the tougher team and stay at 2 in any circumstance and have an extra home court series than try and drop. I think that's where obviously the Bucks are not playing to lose any games, and again, the Cavs wouldn't be obliging them even if they were. But yeah, for me, I'm at this point more interested in how the Bucks look, because I still think this is a team where it's like they can beat anyone if they're playing their best. That's what matters. So that's why this game was so encouraging against the Thunder and some of these recent games in general. But when you look at the East, it's just kind of like fine. I think not being in Boston's bracket is nice. I don't think there is really like the bracket of death like they had in 21 with Miami and Brooklyn. Should have been the Sixers, but they're bums. And then going to the finals. I don't know. I guess I'm just not that moved by the whole bracket in the East, to be honest.
No, I think this is where the parity or whatever you want to call like the mid-tier teams where we all thought Cleveland would be taking kind of a leap towards true contention, and they're just not meeting that. Maybe the Knicks are kind of, but they, again, you mentioned it, like they don't have Randall. OG Anunoby, ever since getting traded there, has been dealt with like a black cloud hanging over him with injuries.
I think he played like 10 games. They were like the best defense in history. He hurt his arm. He had like the loose bodies in his elbow, I think, which that always scares me. He comes back a little early, plays, doesn't look great, and that has not played since. I don't like that pattern very much.
Especially for a Tibbs team.
Yeah. I've knocked some points off them as an East contender because I feel like they got those guys from the Pistons, and every time I look at a box score, I'm like, oh, Tibbs hates these guys. Tibbs will play Josh Hart 54 minutes before he lets Bojan play 30.
Yeah. That was probably the only reason why you don't do that move is your coach actually going to play the guy that might be the most talented.
Like, I mean, it's not like they gave up heaven and earth. Like, they still have all their trade assets or whatever else. But it is kind of funny of just like, all right, we're loaded now. And it's like, well, does it matter if you don't play them?
Yeah. The Heat kind of speak for themselves of just how terrifying it is to go against them in a 7-game series. Like,
okay, I exaggerated. In their game against the Nets, did he get hurt? Do you know how many minutes Bojan Bogdanovic played in Nets-Knicks?
I'm going to guess 7 minutes.
Exactly 7 minutes and 8 seconds. Deuce McBride played 48 minutes in this game.
What?
Yes.
Oh, bro.
Yes, he's literally doing this. I call it out. People get, oh, you're bashing Tibbs. That's a tired narrative. What do you mean?
He wears that on, like, I feel like that's, people think of that as like charming at this point now because it's so like established.
Well, they're winning right now. And
it's not a problem when they're winning, and then they're 30 and 52 next year. It's like, why are you playing this guy 41 minutes?
No, I don't think he got hurt. So the minutes from this game, flourishing Dante DiVincenzo, big Tibbs guy, big Nova guy, 41 minutes, 40 and 52 seconds. Josh Hart, 44 minutes. Isaiah Hartenstein, dealing with an Achilles injury, 26 minutes. Jalen Brunson, 32 and a half minutes. I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah, that's weird.
Deuce McBride, 48 minutes. Maybe he got hurt in that game. Precious Achiuwa, 7.5 minutes. Alec Burks, 15 minutes. Jericho Sims, 18 minutes. Bojan Bogdanovic, 7 minutes. Poor Bojan. It's like, oh, I can't wait to be on a good team again. I'm really going to be able to show what I can do. The Knicks are like, no, you're not.
Nope. Sit down.
Ice. Bojan.
I was going to make a point.
The Knicks and their injuries, the parity in the East, and then
Knicks injuries.
I mean, Orlando is just like too young, I think.
Too young.
And the shooting also.
Yes, I think they're going to run up against that big time. I mean, it's a John Hammond built team. We know.
Yeah.
As good as they've gotten this year. I do think Indiana represents a very interesting kind of like intersection of like, I am right there with you. I mean, probably everybody is right there with you. Like, they're really underwhelming since they got Siakam. And yet, from a Bucks perspective and how they just kind of thoroughly dispatched them, yes, where they were, what time of the year that they were playing them, it's not comparable now. But Tyrese, I don't think the Pacers really care about that. I think Tyrese Haliburton knows that he can give what he wants against this team. I think a lot of the things that we talked about with the Bucks at that time, as much as they were flawed schematically, I think a lot of the worries that we would have with this team and where they're at and like just their overall life cycle, that they're still old. They are tonight notwithstanding, we would have questions about how they can kind of keep in front against a guy like Tyrese Haliburton, who's just, when healthy, knows what he's doing with the ball in his hands and can manipulate defenders in certain ways that is not very comfortable to watch when you're cooking Malik Beasley all the time or whatever. So I think that to me is like, I fear about what that could be, but like we also, I don't know how that works between Haliburton and Siakam in a 7-game series when they clearly haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
And that's where, and TJ McConnell would obviously too, would just be like, I don't want to see him in a playoff series.
Yeah.
You know,
it will be interesting to see if they do match up in the playoffs, how the different defense gets different results from how. I mean, I think he's obviously a problem for them regardless, just knowing his position and what he can do. Yeah. But I would wonder, like, would it be as extreme? Because I felt like a lot of it, I mean, he had the highlight shots, but the aggressive scheme, he just picked it apart so easily. I wonder if the dialed down defense, I think it would work at least a little bit better against him. But yeah, I do think you could make a credible argument that overall the 3 through 5 teams right now could pose less of a threat than the 6 through 8 teams. I think the Knicks are the exception. I think the Knicks, if they're ever healthy, are probably the closest thing to Boston and Milwaukee right now to me. The Cavs have I don't believe in the Cavs anymore. Sorry, had a really nice 14-1 run. Lately, Darius Garland looks like, how can I put this? George Hill.
Oof.
Which, like, good player.
Good player.
Not a max guy, but a good player.
Yeah.
That's not good for them. Mitchell can't get healthy, whatever. Orlando, I just, again, too soon, but love what they're doing. The Knicks, if they're healthy, like, maybe. But again, I was like, oh, their top 7 is so killer. Okay, Tibbs is only interested in their top 5, and they still, as good as Brunson has been, I think if you're Boston or Milwaukee, you're still like, okay, we have better guys.
Yeah. The one thing is that they just might outwork you in terms of the complementary role player guys. Like, honestly, I think with Randall, whatever's going on with him, because it's kind of just been quiet, I think they're kind of better without him.
Yeah.
I think this is kind
of more room. Yeah.
It's kind of showing. And a guy like Brunson, he's not like a Haliburton type, but he's just so solid in what he does. And not just solid, he's a great player. That, I could see him being, a leading player for a guy that might take you to 7 games. They might lose that series, but they they would work you for it kind of
Well,
thing.
that's why I think it's great for the Bucks that they would not see that team in the first round.
Same.
Because that is a team, I mean, just those miles add up. And maybe we've seen it. I mean, they've had all these injury problems right now. We maybe see it more before the playoffs. If you're going to be playing, 3 guys, 40 minutes plus every single game, that obviously has an impact. But in a playoff series, I mean, are they just going to play 6 guys the first game? The Bucks will never see the Knicks in the first round. So whoever they do end up playing against, it's like, well, maybe they win that series, but how long into a playoff run can you keep that up? We'll see. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think overall, given all the ups and downs of the season, if during the low points, we'd be like, well, we're feeling pretty good about how the Bucks are playing, and they've probably got 2 pretty locked up. And they could see a tough team in the first round, but it won't be the Knicks or the Cavs. It'll be a team that has to go through the play-in. I feel like you take that.
I would take it. I will also say Joel Embiid or no Joel Embiid, facing Nick Nurse in a playoff series would probably give a lot of people like no matter what.
Oh, did Steve Novak join the Zoom?
Yes. Sorry,
it's been a chess match between these two.
Match.
The 2 greats in the game these days, Giannis and Nick Nurse.
I was told that Giannis does not like Nick Nurse. No,
he did not read that at the library, though.
No, I did not. Of course not. I do think just the coaching factor of the Pacers, Heat, Sixers would probably, as much as I don't think that exists with Doc as much as it would have with AJ Griffin. I do think a lot of people would look at that as be like, I don't want any part of that. Carlisle, honestly, would probably be the most tolerable of that because I don't think, has Rick Carlisle has not won a playoff series since the Mavericks won a title.
Correct. I was going to say Carlisle has I think in part thanks to Doc, really flown under the radar.
He's really been like, thanks for taking the heat, Doc, old boy.
Has not won 4 games in the same playoffs since 2011, but hey, smart guy.
Yeah.
He's a very astute chap. You can't blow a lead in a series if you never get to a series that matters in the last 12 years, is the takeaway there. I'm not concerned about Doc versus Carlisle or Nurse. Obviously, you're going to get outcoached by Spo. You just need the talent to win out like it did in 21. And I do think, I don't know. They can't do it 2 years in a row. They shouldn't. They shouldn't, just for the love of the game, do it 2 years in a row. I would take the Sixers with Embiid. I mean, it's a bad first round series, but I guess the benefit is then you get 3-6 in the second round, which is Indiana, Cleveland. Okay,
that's a weird series.
I mean, that's if that's your second round, you're not too concerned. The Knicks could be a little scurry in that spot, but if that's after they just had to play Josh Hart 500 minutes in 6 games or whatever, it's okay, maybe you can just wear them down with your own physicality and the miles on at that point. I think it's not having to see Boston till the last round and giving 2 teams a shot to knock them out feels like a big benefit now.
Yes. If the Cavs somehow hold on to 3,
that feels good. That feels good for the Bucks.
I don't think if memory serves, I don't think the Bucks have ever played Cleveland.
I don't think they have either. Because I think it was going to be the first time, and then neither team won last year.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that would be an interesting kind of wrinkle of central teams meeting in the playoffs if that were to come to pass this year.
I feel like despite how good they are, that's probably one of the teams I'd most like to run into in the playoffs. That's not a team that concerns me in a playoff series.
Cleveland?
Yeah. You're unsure?
I'm unsure. I think I would have said least like to when they were, obviously rolling.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of they just are really big if they're healthy. If Mobley is Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
And you have Jared, I don't know. There's just some things about it that I don't like from a Bucks perspective of taking away an advantage of like, yeah, you could maybe play Giannis and Bobby at all time. I don't know. It's if they're playing the like where they were something that isn't just resembling a team that's sliding at a bad time, they can beat them in a very real way. But it also, I don't know. That is such a weird team to make.
I just think the Bucks do the really huge thing better.
I think so too. That's
so.
Yes. The Cavs want to get to that spot, but they're really big and then they're really small.
Yeah, it's a very weird. Again, they just have no one who can really guard Khris. Maybe Okoro, I guess, but then you also have Dame to worry about, and they really don't have. They don't have guys to do both. No. Certainly, that again, a lot of these series are just like if Dame and Giannis play well, I think the Bucks just win. But yeah, it should be fun. I'm really looking forward to the playoffs. I think outside of just the Bucks lens, there's a lot of really fun matchups, especially in the West. I mean, the West is just like there's no good. Like there's no. You're praying for the Kings, who are like not crazy good, but I mean not fun to play against. Like
yeah,
that's kind of the matchup you're rooting for. Or maybe the Wolves if you're not worried about them without Towns. But like I guess Ant and Gobert and I don't know. That's a crazy conference. The East is pretty good, but not the same level in my opinion.
I feel like we are going towards there's going to be a lot of chaos and then it probably ends up in the where it should be, like the best teams show up. But the last few years have not been like that. The Bucks benefited that from as we know. So yeah, as great as Boston has been and they're going to have the best record, I don't view them as the best team necessarily. I think Denver wears that title as long as they know how to play with one another. But it is still just a weird, and like you said, the West is just like, that could be just chaos on top of chaos. Like the Lakers and Warriors are now slated to play in the play-in tournament. Again.
Would be so fun.
It would be very fun.
Rockets, only a game and a half out of 10.
Oof.
Like, if the Warriors lose even a shot to be in the play-in, that's a new low in Golden State.
I did not realize Dallas is the 8th seed and they're 41-29.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of like...
That would be, what, 4th in the East? Or 5th in the East?
They would be 6th by half a game.
Yeah.
So not that many spots, but there's definitely I mean, the Lakers in 9th at 38 and 32. Yeah, I guess that's actually pretty. Oh no. So yeah, it's like 3 spots. The Bulls are in 9th at 34 and 37 currently. I still wish they did it the way they did it in the bubble, where you have to be within like 4 games to force the play-in. I know then that you lose, obviously, the play-in game revenue, whatever that ends up being. But it is like, really, we have to watch the Hawks and the Bulls, who are both under 500, do a play-in game.
I would just relegate those teams. Just send them to the Canadian, the CEBL. Bring in the Winnipeg, I think they're the Sea Bears. That's what their name is.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Good pull. Well, now that we're talking about the Winnipeg Sea Bears, I think that's all we've got to discuss in this episode. Jordan, thank you everyone for listening. If this is your first time, welcome. We'd love to have you stick around. There's going to be a lot more Bucks content in the playoffs. We usually get together after each and every playoff game, of course, preview each round and everything else, as well as our regular weekly content, a couple times a week content ahead of the playoffs. So subscribe wherever you're listening or on YouTube or both. Help us cook the Bucks. Leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out gspn.info to join the Discord, or just, again, find all these links in our socials and everything else. Am I forgetting anything? Anything to tease for top this week?
No, you're good. You're good. There will be a top this week, later in the week, starting into draft prep, because
that's gonna be fun.
Less than a month out from the NFL draft.
Are you a Cooper DeJean guy?
I like his mustard. But yes, I am.
Yeah. It seems like a pretty good draft overall. Like, it seems like a couple of the positions are really deep. I've heard there's a lot of tackles. Would not surprise me if they took a tackle.
Yes, I feel like whatever the Packers do in the first round especially will be a lot more safe or play against perception that the Packers need like a wideout or anything like that. Not that they necessarily do.
If only they did. I mean, the way this draft is, I almost wonder if they will grab one later if they really like a guy. But it's just tough because they probably will. What I'm hearing is like there's 20 guys who will probably be on rosters and playing, like really 20 guys, 20 wide receiver prospects who are that good. So it's like, if you can get one in the fourth, you kind of have to. But also, like, is he ever going to play? I don't know. It's a good problem to have.
Very good problem to have. Very good problem.
Better problem than our guy Andrew Snyder is having with the Panthers right now. Anyway, no more Panthers talk. Thank you all so much for listening. Pod Random, and we will talk to you next time.